forward to this computer. All right. Well, welcome. I know we have Kim's joining us, but my name is Megan, and we're going to be painting a heron today with a pond setting. For today's class, you are welcome to use watercolors. You're welcome to use acrylics. You can really use whatever you wish. I'm going to be using watercolors tonight just to really experiment and be playful with some of the lighter skies. Um, the inspiration has been uploaded into the chat window. However, I will post it in the YouTube space so you have access to that. Again, use any supplies that you have. For the process of using acrylics, you'll start in the background and you'll work your way to the foreground. For me, I'm going to kind of carve out space for the heron first for watercolors. But I will immediately, once I have the heron outlined first, I'm going to start kind of adding in the backgrounds, just like folks with acrylics will be doing. So no worries there. Oh, here comes somebody else. We'll let them in. Terrific. So for supplies tonight for the class, you'll need just an array of brushes. Small to large sizes are usually good. I have a really basic watercolor set here, and I have a little palette or well to kind of mix colors in. If you have acrylic paints tonight, you're welcome to use a paper plate to mix colors. But either way, you'll need a cup of water to rinse your brushes. And I always have a paper towel handy. Tonight I'm painting on acrylic watercolor paper. Whenever I use acrylics in this class, I sometimes paint on paper. Sometimes I do, sometimes I paint on canvases. You can choose, and again, use whatever supplies you have at home for these classes. For anyone that's joining the live, you're welcome to, hey Jenny, welcome. You're welcome to chat in with any questions. I'm happy to answer those along the way. And we'll be checking in to see how everything is going throughout the class. So again, if you're doing acrylics, you're going to start in the background and work your way to the foreground. For me, I'm going to, Jenny, I'll go ahead and drop the inspiration again in the chat window so you have it. She just joined. And I'll keep an eye if there's anyone else joins the live session, I'll go ahead and drop that in there. But for me, since I'm using watercolors, I need to hold space for my heron. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that. For anyone that's doing acrylics, you can maybe make a horizon line, and maybe I'll do that with you here. I have a pencil. If you wanted to use a pencil for tonight's class, you could. There is a horizon line. It's about the top third. The bottom 2/3 is water. So see all that? It's really light. I'll make it a little darker for everybody. The bottom 2/3 is going to be pond or water features. So this is going to be heavy water features here. And above this line is going to be our sky and our trees. So if anyone wants to start by kind of doing a line, you could do it in yellow or orange, totally up to you. We're just kind of making a line here. I used a pencil because I had mine handy. For anyone using acrylics, I know that Kim is using acrylics. You can start painting like a beautiful orange and yellow sky in this full space on this top third. Okay. But for me, I'm going to come in here. Go ahead.
No, I said, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So go ahead and do that. And then for me, I'm going to do that in just a minute, but I'm going to get my heron in first so I can paint around it for watercolors. And I'll kind of walk you through once everyone gets to the heron feature. I'll walk you through what this looks like, but I'm just going to use, actually, I'm not even going to use a pencil. I'm just going to do like a little bit of light outlining with some blue, and I'm just going to kind of freehand it. So go ahead and work on your background up top. Anything above that top line, you can do your yellows and your oranges any way that you wish. So part of these classes is just to kind of unwind and kind of get into the practice. So for me, I'm just using a little bit of like a watery blue to kind of do my hair, and I'm freehanding this, so wish me luck. It's a little tricky. And I can kind of change this a little bit if I need to. This heron has kind of a little bit of an S neck, and it has like a face here. Kind of comes out like this. And I'm just trying to take my time. Again, I could absolutely pencil this out. But I'm just going to do my best to do it on the fly here. So his neck comes up and down. And I'll walk you all through how to do the heron once you get there. So don't worry. If you're doing watercolors, you can absolutely use a pencil if you want a little bit more confidence. It's gonna come down. My bird's gonna kind of be over on the side a little bit because this is gonna be a big feathery back here. So it's gonna come up and over and down. So I have a head, neck. That's not too bad for freehanding it. And then the tail feathers are just gonna kind of come straight down. And then my neck and my body are just gonna kind of fall down here together. And I'm just gonna just trailer these off, and they're just gonna be some feathers. Not too bad. And then I'll just make room for like a little bit, some legs coming down here. So if you're using acrylics, you're gonna do the heron on top of like your entire background. You're not gonna do it right now. There, I have my heron in place. So now that I have like at least most of it, I'm gonna go up and do the background, just like many of you are if you're doing acrylics. And I'll fix my beak and make it longer, and maybe I'll make my head a little bit bigger. So, but at least I have that in there because I want to hold that space. For me, that's important. So I'm going to switch to a bigger brush. And I'm going to do the background just like you all are. So I'm going to do oranges and yellows. And with watercolors, you always want to mix your colors over here on your side palette before you bring them in and on. And with watercolors, and I'm just going to have some fun. Just going to do lots of colors here. You can be playful with where you want to bring in darker colors, where you want to bring in lighter colors. You can decide how much paint pigment you want to use. And I want to apologize in advance. I do have a 2-month-old little baby, so if there's any emergencies and he needs me, I'll have to pause. So I appreciate your understanding in advance. I actually have some family here right now that is helping out, so we might get lucky, but if not, I may need to step away for a moment. But enjoy process. I'm using some lighter colors. Oh, here comes Susan. Terrific. So you can make your sky as vivid um or as soft as you wish. And that's the same principle for using watercolors and using your acrylics. Now, Kim and I were just having a conversation around how she really likes using acrylics because the colors are nice and bold. I'm going to make my sky pretty. I'm making it a little bit more vivid, which means I'm just using a little bit more paint pigment here. And I'm using a yellow color and I'm using oranges. If you're using acrylics, take a few minutes and practice making blending some colors together. See what happens when you mix your yellows and you mix your oranges together, and you can create some really fun different tones. Maybe even if you're doing acrylics, put a little bit of water on your brush, and that will help kind of blend things together here and there. Now, I did not leave a round circle for the sun because I wasn't even thinking of it with watercolor, so I should have done that, but it's okay. I will, I'll add, I'll add in some additional contrast. So let's see here. I can add in a little bit of darker coloring if I want, like a little bit more oranges, like clouds kind of coming in if I wanted to. Susan, welcome to the party. We're just having some fun with some colors. And we're just filling above that horizon line. So for Susan who just joined, our horizon line is 1/3 on the top and 2/3 on the bottom. And that is really, it's really just kind of grounding us. I'm just adding some kind of fluffy cloud-like texture. There we go. And I'm just having fun with it. We'll just spend a couple minutes here on the sky. You can add as much or as little here as you wish. I'm keeping it fairly light right now. It doesn't matter how bright or how dark you go. And you can always kind of come back in here and add more if you want to. It's no big deal. No big deal. You can let it dry and come back to it. So take your time. Mine's really straightforward and simple. So I'm just gonna let it dry, but you really, as an artist, you can work your way down. So the reason I outlined my heron is I want my heron to be a little bit lighter. So I'm holding the white space inside of the heron here. Um, and then what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna let this dry. It's not done, but I'm gonna just leave it for right now so I can kind of play with it after. And I'm gonna start working on some of the water features. So you can, and if you're doing your background and you're doing acrylics, you can go right. You can use blue paint. You can use a light blue. And I'm just going to go up, dance around my hair in here. A little bit of
Coming,
blue paint.
buddy.
Hey, how are you? All right. And I'm just going to slowly dance around. I'm just going to start to fill in the water here at the top. And we'll get a little bit, you can do different tones of blues for your water. And I'm just going to, and you can use a smaller brush to kind of, if you need to, but if you're doing acrylics, you can really just come in with your colors. And you can decide how dark or how light you want your water to be. I'm just starting somewhere and then going from there. So I can always add more paint pigment. Again, I'm dancing around my heron because I want my heron to be a little lighter. But if you're doing acrylics, this can be your whole background. And I can, if you're using watercolor, you can kind of play with how much water you add and where. And you can bring your blue down. You could keep this really simple and just do the same blue all the way down. I might bring in like do blues and greens because it's kind of a pond setting. So I might mix a little bit of blues and greens together and just change this look a little bit. So I might mix blue and green together and kind of fade that in. Just have fun with it. And if you are using acrylics, just paint the whole water because we're gonna do the grass and all that after. So mine is really light. It's okay that mine's light. I am just playing with kind of bringing in some greens and blues. And I'm coming right up next to my hair and I'm just softly kind of patching this in. And the way that I'm blending and playing with these colors and pigments with watercolor, you can do the same thing with acrylic. Same principles, same practices. You just want to have, if you need to mix any green, blue and yellow will give you green. If I want to make it a little darker, I can make it a little darker. I want to make it a little lighter. I might add in down here in this bottom area a little bit of the sun reflection. So I'm going to keep a little bit of the space here a little bit lighter intentionally. If you have already painted down in that the bottom third quadrant, no big deal. With watercolor, I have to be a little bit more intentional of what I want to put where. So for me, I want some of this sky to be reflecting down here. So I'm just cleaning my brush and I'm going to grab a little bit of this yellow and orange sky color. And I'm going to add a little bit of this just ever so slightly, just reflecting. And especially down here where the bird's feet are going to be. Just adding a little bit of this reflection. And then I can tuck the blues and the greens around it. So if you wanted to do that now for yourself to kind of hold space, you absolutely can. Totally optional. But I'm just going to dance in some of the blues and greens around the yellows. Again, you don't have to use the greens if you don't want to. I'm just using a little bit of both just to see what it looks like. And again, you can do the same thing with with acrylics. Just play with how you're blending colors, play with how you're applying colors. And you're painting the whole background. You're going to put your heron on top. I'm gonna paint my heron's legs in, so I hold that white space for my heron's legs. So I'm just gonna use a little bit of orange actually to paint my heron's legs in. Hold some space here. Let's see. Joni, I'm not sure if you're doing watercolors tonight. Heron's legs are kind of, they have a little bit of a bend to them.
I'm doing water.
Yeah, so I'm think about where you want to hold space for these, and then the heron's legs are going to disappear into the water, so they can disappear in wherever you wish. So mine are just going to disappear in here. And just have fun here. Don't try to kill yourself with details. I'm holding space for the legs so I can dance around it with other colors. And no matter what medium you're using, just find the colors that you enjoy. Mix custom colors if you need to. I'm over here, I'm mixing a little bit of blues and greens, and I'm just dancing in ever so slightly into this yellow. And just like with our acrylic classes, watercolor is the same. There's lots of layers. I'll walk you through the heron details for the acrylic folks after, so don't worry, you're not going to miss out on how to actually paint a heron in, but you're going to do it on top after. But for everyone on the call, just work on this background. We want to get our blue and green water in. We're going to add lots of grass. We'll do all that after, but we always start in these classes just establishing the background. If there's any elements like with watercolors that require you to need to hold space, you can hold space for those. And I'm just slowly gonna just fill in around this heron. So the heron kind of stands out. It's gonna be a lighter colored heron, which is why you can see I'm holding that white space. Just make it a little challenging here. It's all good. The other thing with painting is always just check yourself on what brushes you're using. Is there a smaller brush you should switch to, right? Is there a bigger brush that you want to switch to? Just say, hey, am I happy with this brush or should I switch it? I'm using a smaller brush and you can see I'm getting some lighter texture, right? Kind of coming into things. But where I need to do bigger open spaces, I'm gonna grab my big brush again. So it's okay as an artist to kind of bounce around. Sometimes we work on a detail and we say, okay, I think I'm happy with that for now. I'm gonna come back to it. Grab another brush, switch to another area of your water. I'm gonna turn this off and see if it gets the coloring is any different. Oh, not too bad. I was just playing with my lighting here for you. Turn it down. Let's see if that helps. Oh, a little bit better. You can see it's actually very light in person, but it appears on the screen. It's kind of fun. So for me, and I encourage you, let's just focus on filling in the water entirely. And then we'll do our additional details. But I want to thank you all for being here. This is such a beautiful scene. Reminds me of Florida a little bit here. I don't have a pond setting going on yet. Let's see if I'm on like on a beach right now. Maybe I'm channeling my beach vacation here at the end of the summer. The Maine. I was just talking to family about it. But I'm just slowly feathering in, playing with the water. And if you're doing acrylic, it's going to dry pretty quickly. And it's okay to bring more colors in and on top. And anyone doing watercolor can do the same. Let an area dry, come back to it. You can play with how you're holding your brush. So this is one of the bigger brushes that I'm using. And I can turn this brush on the side to get some kind of fun texture. But I'm going to add lots of grass and make this look a little bit less beachy here in a minute. Okay, so just go at your own pace. I'm just being really playful with contrast. I'm not touching my bird yet. I'm just filling in as we go here. We're going to add lots of tall grass, but I'll give you all just another 5 minutes for this background if you need it. If you're done with your background, let me know in the chat. but we'll jump into the next round of details after because there's lots of details for our class tonight. So I'm not going to hustle us too much, but I want to keep us on track here. And of course, like at any of our classes, I encourage you to always take your time. I do need to keep tonight's class to an hour and a half, but this painting, gosh, it could take us, we could easily spend 2 hours on this. So I just want you to always go at your own pace with these classes and take more time if you need it. And most of you do, but I always say that as a disclaimer. All right. So I'll give everyone a couple minutes to play with your water. I'm not doing a ton of like water-like detail yet. I added a little bit of this yellow and I added a little bit of the orangey yellow down here. I'm just letting it dry because we're going to add in a lot of other elements um, as well. So one of the other things, if anybody wants to, well, I have a bird here, so I'm just going to come in and just do like a little bit of like some rings around the bird's feet, like it's standing in the water. Just because I have the bird here again, some of you may not have your bird in yet. Don't worry if you do or don't. It's if you have acrylics, you're probably not there yet, so don't worry. You can always add this in after once your bird is there. But I'm just adding a little bit of water rings for movement where my bird is standing. And I'm gonna let it dry and come back to it. There's some darker contrasting rings here. I'm not gonna add too much. So I'm doing the rings now because we're gonna add some grass in. So I will let the folks know who are using acrylic on when to add the bird. You could add the bird anytime, but one of the important things is that we're going to put trees in here, and I want your bird to overlap the trees. So for me, Jenny's doing watercolor. I know that Kim is doing acrylics. Kim, you don't want to do your bird until you put your trees in because you're going to put your bird on top of your trees, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like its head's going to go on top of it. So
Yep.
that's a disclaimer. I'm going to go ahead and start some of these trees here. I'm using like this dark, pretty bluish green color here. I'm just going to do some really light, gentle, like whatever kind of trees I want. So I'm just going to kind of go for it. I'm going to do like pine trees. You can do abstract. You're just going to do some high and low. I wouldn't go up more than halfway, but you can add as many or as few as you wish. And they're going to go right on top of this water line. So if anyone's doing acrylics, you can do the same thing. There's a lot of layers of trees here. There's lighter trees in the distance. I'm not going to go that detailed today. If you wanted to add some lighter trees in the distance, you can. But I'm going to give everybody 10, 15 minutes or so to play with these trees. And you can just use the tip on a brush and use the tip of the brush to paint these trees. If you want blue trees, you could do blue trees. If you want green trees, you could do green trees. I'm just gonna just add in some high trees and some low trees. I love that these trees are kind of a bluish green color. Mine are actually coming out more green, which is really funny. But I'm just gonna add in, you can play with the colors that you're using. I'm just gonna, you can tuck a couple more in between and in the back. But I'm just gonna add an array of trees, kind of high and low across. And I'm being mindful as an artist to add in different colored trees. So I'm doing some blue trees, I'm doing some bluish green, I'm doing some green trees. Looks really cool. And I'm just using the tip of my brush. And if you're using acrylics, you can do the same thing. I'm starting really tall and pointy with our trees, keeping them high, and then I'm adjusting the height. So I'm doing high trees and low trees, and I'm kind of moderating that in. And I'm tucking some really light colored trees kind of in between to kind of give it that foggy look, which is kind of fun. And I'm just going to continue to work my way over with high trees and low trees. You can keep your trees as tall and thin or wide as you want. If you want to get a neat effect, you can change your colors, right? Do the blue trees, do the green trees. And I'm just kind of alternating here and there. And you can do some wider and you can do some taller. But I really like the change of color. It's kind of a fun thing to try. It's a little bit, if it's a little level two, if it scares you, you don't have to do that. But it's really fun just to consider to try to do something new, right? And it's all optional. You don't have to do a ton of trees like I am. I'm just kind of doing a little bit here and there. And if you want to have these low opacity trees, you just have a little bit of extra water on your brush. Just gives it a little lighter of a color. And I'm just kind of dancing those little tree tops in between the others. So this is helping me move from the ocean to the pond setting. And if you want to add one really big tree, like the inspiration has one really big tree, you could do one really big tree. But I'm just doing some tops of my trees are nice and tall and pointy. I'm again playing with different colored trees in my blues and greens palette. I'm just slowly kind of tucking in little tree tops in between. So it's making it look like a little bit of a forest, which is really fun. And I'm using just the tip of my brush, which is really fun. And I haven't done a ton of with watercolor, believe it or not. I've only done like a handful of watercolor over the past couple of years. And it's really fun to experiment with how you use the tip of your brush and how you use the pigment of the paint to just let the scene kind of take hold of like what it wants to be and where it wants to go. I do the same thing with acrylics too. It's really fun to start with a form and not overthink it. Just let your painting kind of go where it wants to. And that's one of the things I love about these classes. I'm reminding you to not take things too seriously, to not overthink anything. Creativity happens at its best when we're just ourselves and we can relax and just get into the process. It's what I admire about watching you all paint and kind of dive into this. It's just going your own pace, doing things that you're comfortable with, but also considering, hey, where can I push myself? Where can I step out of my comfort zone? Maybe it's doing different colored trees. Maybe it's using a different brush, right? All the things. But I'm here just to remind you to all the different things you could consider. Now with watercolors, I'm coming in and just adding a little bit of extra contrast here and there, just to kind of catch the user's eye. Just adding in a little bit of extra punch here and there, just to add a little extra dimension. And these faded trees in the distance was just a little bit of extra water on my brush. That's it. Very easy. And I'm really using just the tip of this brush. And this is a number, this is a number 5. It's just a small brush. So I'm gonna let those trees dry. They look very tree-like. And my trees are smaller than the inspiration. If you want your trees to be bigger, have them bigger, right? It's all about your own perspective of this. And that's, I'm sure, what each of you are doing. Susan, I'm so glad you're here. Welcome. You may or may not be painting. I don't care. So glad you're here either way. I'm going to drop in the inspiration so you can see it. Lots going on here. All right. I might add like maybe some darker green bushes like at the base of this. I don't know. Let's just see what happens here. I don't know if I want to do that or not. We'll try. So I can add in some bushes here. Again, totally optional. If you wanted to add any extra contrast, you could. Just a little bit of an extra layer to the scene. And you can see why I did my Heron. It's because I wanted to kind of hold that white space. So I'm just adding some like low bushes. And if you have acrylics, you can do the same thing with your acrylic paints. And these are all just little details. So you can do again as much or as little as you wish. I'm just giving you a few ideas for consideration. Awesome. We're gonna get crazy here in a minute with some tall grass. I don't know how this is gonna work with watercolors, so I'm kind of being a little risky here. So for Kim, who is using acrylics tonight, Kim, your heron is still not existent. You have a sky, you have trees, and you have water. That's all you're supposed to have.
Yep.
We're doing the tall grass in the middle next. So my heron is there. I'm going to be painting the grass behind my heron. I might need to check in my baby here in a minute. But how are y'all doing, Jenny and Kim? And you all want to keep working on the trees for a little bit? Or are you ready to try the tall grass? You tell me.
I'm good on the trees.
Okay. So the tall grass are like yellow and orange colors, and you want to find kind of a long brush. And I'm going to start with some oranges, and they kind of go. You can kind of start. Maybe imagine. I'll grab another brush here. There's perspective here, so you want to find an angle, and ignore my bird, right? You want to find an angle for which the grass is coming in because we're creating this element within this. So if I put my brush here, the grass is going to start on top of this line. So I'm just going to come in and add, look at that, some grass on top. I'm going to make this a little darker or more of a pigment for so I'm just going to come in and I can see some of my water behind it. It's okay. I'll come in a little darker. And you're basically just going to come in and you're going to do tall grass. It can come up. So if you don't have your heron here, you can come up almost like you can come up into the trees if you want to. I'm just going to come up using my eye. I'm just going to do whatever really. If the grass is going to be lower and it's going to have like an ending close, like it's going to be lower on this left side. And you're going to do tall grass coming up. And you're going to have the top of your grass is going to be even of some kind. So on the top here, you can have a line of some kind. So you can see I'm holding this mark here, and you're gonna so I'm gonna hold this here, and I'm just gonna get some of this grass in, so it's all even. And I'll move my brush as my straight edge in just a minute, and you'll see what we're creating here. So I love using the tools that we have. Look at that. See, I created, like the bird is now in the marsh, right? But you're kind of creating the marsh area without the bird here using acrylic. So I'm just going to use my orange. I'm doing orange grass because it kind of stands out, and maybe I'll tuck in some yellow and play with this grass for a minute. Right. So I'm just going to come in here and layer my grass. My grass is going to be oranges and it's going to be yellows. Jenny, if you want to, maybe we mix in some yellows over here. We can have some lighter grass and some darker grass. You can kind of pick and choose. This is fairly dense in grass, so you kind of want to get a little grass crazy here, whether you are with acrylics or watercolors. It really covers up most of the water. Now I could have just painted the grass here without the water, but I wanted to get the water in for the whole class's benefit. So I'm just going to do this on top. And I'm just going to do lots of grass. And for me, it's okay if I see a little bit of the water behind. I'm not really worried about that. Again, this is all for fun anyways, so no big deal. I'm gonna come in, just do some fun grass. This is my little marsh, right? And just have some fun with the grass. And you can do a little bit of the orange and yellow grass over here too. We're gonna have some green come down, but if you want to do a little spritz of the yellow and orange over here on the left, you can as well. I'll grab the baby for a minute, so bear with me here. Go ahead and have a few brush strokes with that, with the grass. I'm gonna fill it in lots of different places. So again, oranges and yellows. There are darker reds that we'll add in after. So sometimes you can start with darker colors and work to lighter colors, or you could start with lighter colors and work to darker colors. But in the inspiration, you can see it's more dark at the base of the grass and it gets lighter as you go up. With watercolors, it's pretty difficult for me to achieve that. Right now, I'm just letting these dry. Sometimes it's good to let an area dry in either way, because then you can come back in and you kind of layer in additional like lighting detail. So take a few minutes to play with that. I will do the same. And you can find a brush that works for you. So a brush that has a nice fine tip. Let's see here. You never know, you can use anything really. And then let's see, maybe I'll do just a few little orange sprigs coming off over here. And I'll add in more green. Now with watercolor, it's tricky. I could have just added the grass in as like a forefront element, like doing foreground first. That could have absolutely worked. And not done this water. It's okay though, no big deal. Sometimes it's good to just experiment. And I'm gonna put lots of kind of green grass below this. So I'm just adding a fun bit of orange over here. And I'll make this a little darker. You can see it's really blending into the water. I'm not really worried about that right now. Another thing you can do is if you're letting an area dry, I'm gonna come in here with some green. I'm gonna continue over my marsh, transitioning from this yellow and orange over to green. And this is gonna come kind of straight across. So if you wanna take a break from what you're doing, you can transition. Otherwise, you just keep going. For me, I'm just letting this dry. And I'm just gonna bring my green over. This is really making it look more pond-like. And this is so fun. I'm actually painting with my right hand and I'm a lefty because I'm holding the baby right now with my left arm. So this is like challenge central over here. Believe it or not, you can do it. You can do grass with your opposite hand. Ladies and gents, if you just use your opposite hand, it gives you some really flavorful here. Look at that, looks like grass. And then look, I'm gonna do some green down here. It's all good. It keeps a little bit of a more loose atmosphere. I don't think I would paint a bird with my right hand, Jenny, but I will, I'll do the grass, no problem.
That looks good to me.
Isn't it funny?
Yeah.
So it's just, we're really kind of creating our little March setting here. And mine is really light. And that's for me right now, that's totally fine. I can come in with some more, once it dries, I can come in with some more rich greens. Have patience with it, right? If you do lots of colors with watercolors, they will kind of merge together. They will merge. So it's good for me. I want to bring in dark green, especially at the bottoms, but guess what? I need it to be a little bit drier. Or if I intentionally want it to blend, I can do it now. So it's just kind of being aware of your surroundings. For Kim, who's using acrylics, she can better manage and control her darks and lights really at any time she wants, which is nice. It's one of the benefits. And I know that Kim was telling me about how she likes the darker contrast and the darker color pigmentation of using acrylic. So we use a lot of acrylic. Totally agree. Totally agree. But tonight's a really fun example of trying to do something a little different. And I'm going to bring this green grass kind of all the way down. And I can go right on top of the water. That's no big deal. And you can bring some of the green up into the yellow if you want. Totally up to you. And I'm really creating this scene, right? This pond-like scene. And we'll do more, go buddy. Do more reflection like detail with some contrasting colors in a minute, but just take a few minutes to play with the greens where you want them. If you want to bring in any of the leafy thing, the leafy areas over here, you can. I think that's probably something that Kim can try. But I'm just going to let this dry for a minute. And I want you to be playful to this background. Enjoy the process. Check yourself, see what brushes you're using. Changing brushes is sometimes a good thing. No, as I look at the inspiration, there's a lot of contrasting areas, and we could spend hours doing a lot of the contrast. And for tonight, I'm choosing as an artist, and you can make a choice on your end, is I'm embracing the subject for what it is. I'm doing this heron with this beautiful scene, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of doing a lot of depth work because I could spend hours doing depth work. Doing depth is really starting with a base tone or color for each object and then making areas lighter and darker for each of those areas. You can do as much or as little as you want. For the folks on the call, you've done some of that. So feel free just to go at your own pace and play with that. However, I'm just going to do a little bit here and there. I'm not going to go into a crazy depth work for tonight. But what we'll do is we'll spend another 10, 15 minutes on our grass, and then we'll shift to the bird, and we'll have 30 full minutes to do the bird tonight. And then we'll do additional adjustments from depth. Like we'll add some more depth to our water here at the end, maybe to the sky. If you want to add an additional contrast, you can do that. We'll do some of those finishing touches at the end, but get some nice base layers for our grasses. I'll add more in just a moment. And then we'll do the bird at the top. We'll start the bird at the top of the hour, just for a little landing. My bird is there and hanging out. For me, I'm just letting all these areas dry. And then I'm going to come back in and add more detail. So go at your own speed. And we'll keep working on those details together. Now I'm going to bring in, I have some nice lighter oranges and yellows that are here now. I'm going to start to layer in some darker colors. So for my darker contrast for some of my grass, I'll use maybe like an orangish red or a blood orange red color. And I'll focus that on primarily on the base to see if I can get some grass-like long, thin lines with that blood orange color to create some depth. To create some of that contrast. And that contrast is just like the trees where I have some darker greens in the trees. I want some darker contrast with the grass to add a little bit of shading. All right. So let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and grab a nice thin brush. And I'm going to grab a little bit of red and mix it with my orange over here. And I'm just going to come in at the bottom of these. I'm just going to do some nice long red. And this is really soft. So I'm kind of embracing these soft colors tonight, but I'm going to add some contrast. Then at the base of this, and whoever's doing acrylic, you can do the same thing. With a gentle hand, you kind of get familiar with your paint brushes. And this is a really great practice. So it's just slowly layering in a little bit of contrast here. Now I'm going to make this a lot, have quite a bit of contrast here in a minute. So hold on to your hat. So I'm gonna add some more red. Look at this. I'm gonna use red to kind of come in here. That's really strong contrast. And you can do some that kind of are coming out into the water a little bit if you wanted to. If you don't like something, you can always get a brush and kind of wipe it off really quick. I'm just gonna layer in some contrast with this, with red, orangish red. You can kind of soften your shoreline. We'll add some brown and darker contrast down here on the shoreline. You can kind of add some of the texture with the tip of your brush right on the shoreline here. That's why we're taking a few minutes to play with the grass features. So you can kind of create that edge right where the grass meets. And it's the same thing with acrylics as it is watercolors here. Just figure out what you want your contrasting color to be for this grass edge. And just do some nice thin brush strokes. Again, I'm just using the tip of the brush. And now look at this, this line is coming out much more clear. I might use purple or a darker blue, create a little bit of reflection here in the water to kind of create more contrast. But let's just start somewhere and see where it goes. And I can bring some of this contrast up into this taller grass if I want to. So again, do as much or as little as you wish here. I'm just here to give you different tips and tricks. And again, for folks painting with acrylic, you're going to paint your heron on top of this whole area. Now I'm just going to kind of, for me, I'm going to finish. I'm going to feel like I'm fairly satisfied with the grass here in a minute. And I'm going to come over and do my little spritzer grass over here. And I'm just going to, I want this to be done. And again, with watercolors, you can see through some of this. So I'm just going to do some layering. With watercolor, you have a little bit more patience. You can play with the pigment. And for acrylics, you can always kind of tone down your pigment by adding water to your acrylic paints. Otherwise, you're going to have full pigment, which is great, right? There's a lot of benefits to that. But with watercolors, I'm just kind of coming in, just doing a little bit more and more. And as I mix over here, you can see it's darker. That means I have less water over here that I'm mixing. It's going to appear darker, which is good because I can always come in and add some more yellow and make this a little brighter too if I need to. But I'm going to add some contrast to the green down here. So since we did contrast on these oranges, I'm going to do the same thing with the green. So go at your own pace. I have a darker green over here. I have a dark Kelly green. Looks like I have another dark green up here too. So I'm just going to grab a little bit of this. And just like with acrylics, you kind of want to mix and find your colors first before you go a little too crazy. I'm just going to add in a little bit of this green, kind of spritzing in. This is my green pond nature coming into my tall grass of my oranges. And I'm just adding in a little bit of the dark green down here too. And I'm going to add a little bit of that tall dark green down here. Gently with the tip of my brush into this tall grass as well, just like we did with the oranges. And I'm doing a little bit of this darker contrasting color here. Now we're all using different colors and we all start with different colors and darknesses and lightnesses. So you choose kind of what you want to do and where. And if you want to do something totally different than what I'm doing, that's totally fine. I always welcome folks just to use this time on how you want to use it. I'm inspired to add a little bit of yellow right now to my green. Some of these green leaves have a little bit of yellow in them, which is kind of fun. But I want to make sure the green dries first. So I'm going to just do some yellows kind of on top of this green that I just did. And if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. I'm just being playful and open to the process of creativity, which is scary for some, but I love just playing with colors, and I have nothing to lose here tonight with each of you. If anything, I'm showing you what it's like to just be spontaneous, which I really freaks a lot of people out with art. I think we've talked about that before in these classes. Spontaneity is something that it takes a long time for people to get grounded and feel okay with.
I struggle with that one.
It's hard. That's why I like doing
Yeah.
it, Jenny, because it makes people feel so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
It's hard. I have a little
I'm
so I'm
trying to
using
embrace, being
I
uncomfortable
know it's
tonight.
so funny. So I have watercolor here, and I'm gonna start adding a little bit, just a little bit of darker contrast to the base of these grasses. I have a little bit of like, it's black, but it's kind of going on as gray, and it's creating just a little contrast at the base of these elements. So you could use a dark green here, Kim, if you're using, and I could certainly mix a dark green too. Oh yeah, look at that. I just added a little bit of black and green together. That's gonna be a big contrast. I don't know how that's gonna look, but we can try it. I don't mind being spontaneous here and just, oh, look at that. This is some crazy contrast. I'm gonna bringing it up a little bit. Maybe I bring it down to the water a little bit. So this is some more contrast. Maybe I just bring it into my water to make it look a little bit more natural. So for Jenny, you can figure out how you want to add contrast to the base. And then I'm just kind of bringing this darker green into the water a little bit, just to kind of like have it blend in. So you can see how that really just kind of grounded that space back there. And then I'm gonna do the same thing with the red. So for me, I found like a nice greenish brown, or it's not brown, sorry, it's like a greenish black color. And I'm, with my watercolors, I'm just slowly kind of adding it to the base of all this grass area. Now it can be as contrasting, if that's way too dark. It can be as contrasting or as light as you wish. But it's really just starting to ground that space. It's like really creating this like little marsh-like area. And you kind of bleed it in. And if you want to blend this color just gently into your acrylic area, you can just water it down a little bit, Kim. And for anyone else that's using acrylic, I'm just using, it's kind of making it look a little like, I don't know, very prompt-like. The color changes. It's kind of fun. Wasn't planning on that. This is the evolution and the experimentation of art here. Was not planning on that happening tonight, but it's working. And again, I'm kind of going in between my bird's legs, Jenny. I know that you have watercolor as well. You can always kind of dab with your finger if you have too much paint pigment. But I'm doing a darker contrast, and I'm bringing in this horizontally. See how my brush strokes here from the bottom of this angled brush, this tall grass, it's coming in horizontally because it's creating this marsh-like setting. So as you're doing your darker contrast, you can play with where and the angle of how this is coming in. The water has a horizontal feel to it. And I like this color. So find a color that works for you. It may not be this color. I mixed black and green together. That's how I got this. And this is the watercolor blend. And I'm just bringing it up a little bit. You could do some brush strokes going up. You don't have to go too high. You can kind of pick and choose. But this is making it certainly like a pond-like setting. Just using the tip of the brush to kind of dance it in. Gives it a little shadow, allows those lighter colors to really pop right out. And I may not be done adding like this spritzy thing over here. Like for me, that's not done, and it doesn't have to be. It's just kind of doing one thing at a time. But the contrast is really important. It kind of helps hold the substance of the setting. But you could do as much or as little of it as you wish. There's a small grassy area coming in this bottom right corner. I'm not going to do anything there just because of for time's sake. But if you wanted to add in that additional element over here in this corner, you can. But for me, again, I was saying we only have, 3-4 minutes left for our grass. Just keep going at your own pace. I'm going to add a little bit more contrasting detail to this grass. I have lots of orange grass. I will tuck in some yellow after. I'm just using a flicking motion to kind of create some long spritzy grass. And with watercolor, this is really, really light. If you wanted to add like cattails or anything like that, you certainly can. I'm gonna add a little bit more contrast over here. I'm gonna do some oranges. And I'll do some yellow on top as like a final touch. So I'll do some bright yellows kind of on the tips of this grass as like a fun final touch. There's some orangey yellow right here. Because in the inspiration, it's quite pretty. There's a gradient to a lot of these objects. If you look at the inspiration closely, it's darker and then it's lighter. And this is pretty vibrant, but we're just gonna embrace it for what it is tonight. This yellow is like fire yellow. Very bright. In person, it's like yellow. And I can actually take this and I might be able to dab some of it. It's okay, it's just like very bright. Maybe I'll take a little bit of my mustard, try to tame it down a little bit here. Watercolors, there's no correction, Jenny. You have to like be very mindful of your coloring, your color choices. But it's a part of the practice, right? It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's all good. We're here to play anyways. So I'm just adding in some grass. I think I'm like happy enough, with this grass for right now. I might take, and for folks doing the bird next, I will walk you through on how to do the bird shape in just a minute. Because we'll all do our bird together here. We're gonna fill it in, and Kim will paint her bird if she hasn't already. And I'm just adding some more rings around the bird's feet, but we'll do that more with once folks actually do their bird. So I'm gonna let this dry. I'm gonna slowly transition us. Take a minute to finish what you're doing. Again, no rush. I'm not like incredibly done with my grass, but we're good enough for right now to kind of let it dry and come back to it. I'm gonna give us some time right now to do our bird together, our heron. And I'll probably come in and add more of this. There's really a lot of beautiful foliage in this grass, so maybe I'll do that at the end as we're looking at the inspiration. So I'll do more of that. But I want to be mindful of time. Again, I do apologize. I do have to wrap up tonight at 7:30 to take care of my little baby, who is 2 months old. So exciting. It will get easier. We'll jump to our bird next. So your heron can be any color that you want. God, there's so many different versions and varieties of herons. I'm doing a white heron with blue details. So I'm having white feathers and blue feathers. For anyone that needs to draw or paint the heron, you can grab a pencil if you wish to outline it and draw it with a pencil on top. So Kim, if that's something you wanted to do, you could certainly do that. For for Jenny, I'm mixing a little bit of blue, and I'm gonna just define the top of the head here, and just I'm gonna give it a little bit of blue right on the top of the head, and I can give it a little bit of a blue feather kind of coming off the back. It's kind of like a little hat or on top, and we'll keep room here. Just adding, I'm gonna add blues to my white. Jenny, did you hold white space for your bird?
I did.
Yeah. So then I'll coach through this watercolor approach first. So I'm just gonna use this light blue paint just to kind of go around it, maybe on the back of the neck, add a little bit of like blue feathering along this front of this chest. For anyone that's drawing the bird, you can use like a light blue if you want to outline it like I did. So I used the light blue paint. You could do the outline with that. If you wanted to do your pencil first, you could do your pencil first. Doing like, I'll fix my bird's beak. My bird's beak is going to be orange, but I'm just using blue right now to go, I'm kind of feathering out on the chest, Jenny, kind of creating a little bit of shading. You can add some like your lines, your blue lines or your kind of feather-like lines. Let me turn this down. I'll bring this a little closer for you, and I'll change my lighting to see if I can make it any darker. There we go. So you want to hold as much white space as possible. I'm gonna grab a little bit more blue, and there's like this wing-like detail here where it's like a little bit of a wing, and this is a little bit darker blue here. There's like a little bit of an area where this is like shaded, and then there's a big wing right here. So one way of doing this part is you can kind of come around into like this S form. You can kind of come down and you can kind of start forming some feathers. So there's these like long feathers. You kind of create this little pocket here, and this can kind of just come down and fill in. That's creating shade on the bird. And then there's these long feathers, and you can be really playful here. There's 2 sets of feathers, and Jenny, you can play with this as much or as little as you want here, but there's different layers. So there's like shorter feathers up top. So I'm just going to come in and just do shorter feathers, this long line. And then there's some of these bigger feathers that kind of come under. So again, I'm just being really playful. If you don't, and you can do some longer feathers, but I'm using a light blue. So for anyone doing acrylic, you could start with this white bird and add in blue detail, or you could do, if you're doing a gray bird or something, you can do these colors and this layering detail on top after. So I'm kind of creating 2 kind of sets of wings with this bird, and I want my bird to stay fairly light. So I'm going to be very intentional about trying to hold as much white space as possible. That's my goal. And I may not do a ton. So it's just go at your own pace here. Watercolors is totally different in this regard than acrylic. This blue is going to come down to the legs. So the legs, Jenny, are going to be this blue too. And for Kim, this little pocket here is going to be this blue. The legs. The legs are going to be a little bit darker. And it's going to come down just on the underside, top of the legs, and maybe just down the back just a little bit for a little contrast. My legs are going to be like orange color, orange and brown, maybe some darker blues. So just have fun, play with your colors, use darks and light colors here. And this is applied for all mediums. Use darks and light blues. Your bird does not have to be white like on mine. I'm just being really playful with darks and light blues, highlighting some of these feathers. I'm using, again, water to kind of manage how dark or light this is being applied. And everybody's herons are going to look different. Trust me, I know that. We paint animals every now and again in these classes. And I'm just adding a little bit more contrast to the back of the neck here. Single line to make the bird stand out. But all our animals always will come out different. Somebody's will have like a bigger head, smaller legs, like you name it. Like there's no judgment here. We're a very friendly crowd with regards to our animals because it's just the process. So you can see I'm just playing with some of the texture here, and I'll bring it out a little bit. If I want to bring a little bit of this blue down into the leg, just to kind of ground the shape, I can totally just do a little bit of a line or two of these legs. I don't have any of those funky knee shapes with my bird. I forgot to do that. But I'm gonna clean my brush, bring in a little bit of orange for the legs. So some of you are likely still working on your bird. Just you do that. My legs are gonna be a little orangish. If I wanted to change the color, I totally can. I could add a little bit of brown to the legs if I wanted to. I have a little bit of brown on my watercolor, so I'm just gonna tuck in a little bit of brown here and there. And then those legs are gonna disappear right into the water. And you can add some of those water rings too. You can even just do some horizontal lines down here just to really like chop those legs off into the water. So my bird has some legs. Let's see here. I did blue at the top. Again, you can figure out how much contrast you want to bring. I'm going to make this a little bit more contrasting of blue. You can decide how much water you want to use if you're doing watercolor. If you're not doing watercolor, you can really play with, you can use your white to lighten things. You can use a darker color to darken. I'm going to have a nice, this is a really important thing for everyone. I want to have a nice contrasting line on the chest of this bird so the bird stands out. See that? The bird really is going to stand out right here with that nice. And I'm going to do a little bit of that blue contrast on its head as well, just so the bird stands out. You can do as much of that contrast again with a darker color, whether it's a dark blue or if you're doing grays, you can decide. You can decide. And then I come in with just a little bit of extra contrast here and there. And just feel free to be playful here. Okay. So I'm playing with the blues right now. Nice, light, some dark colors. I'm gonna let some of the blues dry and I'm gonna go to my beak. My beak is gonna have oranges in it. And just make sure your brush is really clean before you go to your oranges. Because if you mix blue and orange together, you're gonna get brown. So your beak is gonna be nice and long. My head has a lot of white contrast, but look at that. That bird really came to life. Just a little bit of orange on the beak. And these birds have long beaks. So Jenny, we got to be careful here with how long our beak is, but Kim can paint right over something if she wants to. We're using watercolors. We got to be real careful.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I'm just doing, so the bottom of my head is fairly white. My neck is white. I have that blue cap on. We'll add the bird's eye in a minute. But I'm just doing a simple orange beak. Look at that. And I can just leave it and let it dry. And then I can put more paint pigment on top of it after if I need to. I'm gonna make my bird legs a little darker. So I'm letting my beak dry. And again, everybody's kind of at different points. So just take your time with wherever you're at. I'm going to add a little bit. You hear the baby, apologies. Baby Newbie.
Yeah.
he's right here. I'm just adding a little brown on my legs for the contrast. There, I like those brown legs. And again, there's so much shading and depth work you can do with this bird. do as much or as little as you wish. We could do like gray shading like on the bird's neck, but so just do what you're comfortable with here. If you wanted to add a little bit of brown, I feel like most herons have like a little bit of brown on them. Be playful with how you fill in your heron. I'm still keeping mine fairly light, but I'm adding a little bit of brown. I feel like brown is very common. Browns and grays and birds, very common colors. With watercolors, I can just add a little bit just to see if I like it. Kind of matches things a little bit. Now I'm going to do the bird's eye very carefully. I have a little bit of black watercolor, and I'm not going to put too much water on it, but the bird's eye is right below. It's kind of in the middle of the head here. And I'm going to do a small circle to start and just see how this goes. Eyes there. I just did a tiny little round circle, and it has like a tiny little white dot in it, which I tried to leave. I kind of did a circle outline. I have a very angry heron. He looks very angry. I need to try to make him a little more friendly here. Maybe I'll put a smile on his face. Who knows? But I'm going to rinse off my brush a little bit, and with a little bit of gray, we can give him a mouth as well.
I have a hard time with the eyes sometimes on animals. They look crazy.
It's so hard. And eyes like totally they determine expression, you know?
Yeah.
Now I will not judge anyone. If you have a bad eye, Jenny, you go get some white paint, you put it right over that eye and you fix it. Because if we were using acrylic paint tonight, like Kim, we could cover things up much easier.
It's
But
so
no judgment
different.
zone. No judgment. But this is just fun, right? So I
Yeah.
have just a beacon, and I'm just letting that beak dry because I can make it a little stronger in pigment once it dries to cover up some of the background. So let's see, I just added some orange to my, I'm gonna do more yellows for my beak. Let's see here, go back to your yellows, Megan. There's a little bit of a mustard here. I'm gonna do a little bit of a mustard on this beak. Serious, very serious heron. I don't know what I'm gonna do to fix him, Jenny. I'll figure it out.
I'm afraid to put an eye on mine.
Let me see if I can change the eye shape a little bit.
You
Oh
may
look,
just
I'm
go
just adding some
eyeless.
eyelashes. There, it just became a little
Oh,
friendlier.
there
I
you
added like a
go.
little
That
bit of an
looks
eyelash
better.
on the back.
Yeah, it
There.
softened it.
It softened it just a touch. And I'm gonna do a little bit of a line for the beak. It still looks pretty angry, but maybe I just need to add a little bit of a curl for the mouth to make it smile. Let's see if I can do that. There, it's like an upward smile. There, now it's like kind of smiling at me, which does not make it look any realistic anymore. So I'm gonna dab that off if I can. So with watercolor, you can grab like a little bit of water on the corner of a paper towel and you can kind of dab it off a little bit. There, I wiped that smirk off. So it's just really, we're playing with our colors here. Um, we have about 15 minutes left. So play with your birds, feathers, play with your grass, play with your shading. I'm happy with the color of my bird. I'm happy with the color. I like keeping it lighter. I'm gonna try not to touch it. I might add a little bit of a darker contrast on the underside of this blue hat I've put on it. Back of the neck. So I like that the bird is simple. I'm just kind of playing lightly with some of the feathers, but I want to keep it as light as possible. So I'm going to try not to mess with it too much. That's just me coaching myself to not go off the deep end here. So you can do that for you where you don't want to touch things anymore. There we go. I like the darker contrast on the leg. There's some like knee-like detail. You can kind of add some texture to the bird's legs if you want. I'm not going to go too crazy down here. There's like a lot of texture in the inspiration. We're not going to do that. If you want to, you can. The water reflection is pretty important around the bird. Kim's painting with acrylics tonight. She has the luxury of adding white to her water reflection, which is really fun. But take a look at the water, ladies and gents, and like add in a little bit more yellows, like add in a little bit more, if you want to add any more color in. So for me, I might put in a little bit of more oranges into the water to get that sunset. If you want to look at that, it looks much nicer with a little bit more pigment. Adding a little bit more oranges into the water. This is where we just let our painting evolve in all the ways that we want it to. I love putting a little bit of that color in there. Adding in that contrast, like I had that mossy green contrast coming in to create some shading. Maybe I'll add in some of that pretty, this is where you can work on any details. So some of you are probably working on your bird still. I may add in some of this really pretty, there's some like fern-like detail. Let's see if I can make some of these like pretty, like flowery ferns kind of coming in. I don't know if I can do it. I'll try. It's just I'm working on this like foliage that's in the pond. I didn't do any foliage, so there's like a little bit of like a fern thing happening here. I'm gonna just do another one over here just to see what it looks like. I'm just adding in a little bit of extra foliage. Maybe flowers coming up from the edge of this pond. For me, it's just secondary texture. That looks much better. The secondary texture kind of coming up from the tall grass. I'm just being a little creative here. I'm just using an orange so it really stands out. Just adding, again, secondary texture, just kind of coming up from the pond, tall grass. It can be dark, it can be light. This pond has so much going on. There's usually trees growing next to ponds. There's flowers. There's, pussy willow flowers, all the things. I'm just doing little dabs here and there just to kind of create a little bit of extra texture. For me, that looks so much better than what was there before. It was pretty boring with just tall grass, in my opinion. But this is the evolution of art, and it's such a good example of just not overthinking it, just saying, hey, what else do I want to add and where? It's such a powerful thing of just kind of getting into your painting and what do you want to experience here? Just made it look just a little bit more natural. And these are just some of the final touches that just happen, but it's just about you kind of getting into the experience, being a part of it and not being too judgmental. I'm just going to add a little bit of that same like detail over here. These might be flowers. I don't know what they are. Kind of look like little Japanese, like. Just making it look a little bit more welcoming than just a bunch of tall grass. But this is where the more you practice art, the more you realize that you may not know what you're doing up front, but if you let yourself just be a part of the process, these fun little details can happen. And I love it. And I could do some overlapping, some darker ones on top of this grass too. Not only just on the top that I just did, but I can do some other ones over here. This is just the layering piece. And with acrylic, we do this in every class. We start in the background and we work our way to the foreground. So no matter tonight, if you're using acrylics or watercolors, you can continue to add in another layer of like foliage, like halfway up this grass. And I used an orange, which is a darker color than the background. So you can layer with darker colors, again, if you're interested, on top of what you have to create that extra foliage or extra flowers if you wanted to. And I'm using, for Jenny's sake, I'm using less water and I'm using some just more paint pigment to just have it stand out a little bit more. And I could do this by doing this, I'm doing kind of like orange like flowers on this thing down here. But you can easily do that. You guys get to hear all the squeaks. All right. So just take your time. Everyone's at different stages. Let me know how I can support you. We'll do some, buddy. I'll do some darker water contrast in that back part of the pond by the trees in just a minute. We'll do some more beautiful blue contrast up there for a little bit of fun reflection. So I'll let you continue to play with the plants and the bird and the grasses. I can even add more flare to the sky if I wanted to. My sky is pretty tame right now. That could be something I certainly do. Like I could do it at a later time. But let's do a little bit of the blue here in this backwater. I'm gonna clean my brush really well. And I'm using like, I'll use like a medium-sized brush for this. It's kind of like a 1/4 inch brush maybe. And I'm just gonna grab a little bit. I have a little bit of blue going here. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna keep it a little darker, a little bit more contrast towards the backside, and the bottom side is gonna be a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna just see on the backside of this water how I'm just adding a little bit of extra contrast. I'm gonna keep the bottom of the water a little lighter. So this is, again, it's totally optional. Watercolor, acrylic, you can do this. Bottom will be a little lighter. And I'm just doing some horizontal brush strokes, kind of left, right, to kind of fluff this in. This may create too much movement for you. Just if this is too much movement for you, you can smooth it over. But for me, I like that it's kind of creating a little bit of shading back there. And if you wanted to add a little bit of extra contrast on that line of where the water meets the green, you can put in some more blue there. So I'll do a little bit of that just to show you what it looks like. With a thin side of the brush.
Tony, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. I just changed my audio. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. My audio changed over. So I'm just using a little bit of this darker blue contrast underneath those trees. But I'm so excited to see everybody's work. I hope you've enjoyed this. There's so many layers and details to this art tonight. I'm excited to see where you take it. But if there's any parts of your painting that you need help, if anyone's watching the recording and you need assistance, just comment on that YouTube page. You can also reach out to me on Patreon. I'm happy to coach you through any steps where you might need it. But for folks on the line, if there's anything I can do to kind of help support you, please let me know. But I'm very excited to see how your work is coming through. We've made a lot of good progress over the past hour and a half here. But I think the scene is quite beautiful, and I love the composition. And sometimes you can hold or manage the composition, and you don't have to do all the crazy details. You can if you want to, but it's just about kind of being there with this heron in that pond and just relaxing and looking out and seeing the trees. Maybe you do mountains in the distance. Maybe we just have a beautiful, soft sunrise. It can be anything, right? That's the power of art. So Kim's, I know your camera is still not working, so I would love for you to send me an email when you're done. I'd love to see how you're doing. I'm gonna unpin myself. Jenny, if you don't mind, I would love to see your artwork when you're ready. I know you don't mind sharing usually.
See if, hang on one second, I need a little more light here.
Let's see. Beautiful. Great job. I love that your bird stayed nice and light. So
Yeah, I
gorgeous.
killed it. The beak's a little orange,
Oh,
so
hold
I
on. I
might,
can't hear you. Hold on 1 second. My audio
okay.
changed. Give me 1 minute. I want to be able to hear your comments. Okay, try talking again.
The beak is a little bit more orange than I want it, so I'm gonna come in when it dries and try to lighten it up.
Yeah. Oh, it's so beautiful. Nice job. I applaud you. That's beautiful. And Kim, I certainly look forward to seeing yours as well. Let me go ahead and
Yeah,
put my pin back. What did you all think about tonight's class?
it was pretty interesting.
It's different, isn't
I
it?
thought the bird would be painted differently.
Yeah, so with the bird, it's really, if I was painting with acrylic tonight, I would have painted a white bird and then I would have added the blue on top of it, right? Since I was playing with watercolor tonight, I held space with the white. There's always, tons of different approaches on how you could paint something, but typically you start with a background color of any object and then you add the layering and the textures on top, whether it's the feathers or the shading typically goes on top. Did you paint a lighter bird, a whiter bird, or a gray bird?
He's white right now, but when I looked at the picture, I thought we would be doing like
Bird?
no white, but blue feathers and then white on top of it.
Yeah. So
I just thought it was a lot different than the way you did it, and I like the way you did it because I can see the shape of my bird before I start doing all the colors on it.
totally. And we could have totally interpreted it as a lighter blue, a blue bird with the lighter feathers. It's just really, it's up to the artist, on how to do that. This bird, looking at the inspiration, it looks like the head and the neck are white, but it looks like the body's more blue, right? To your point.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I think it was a good class.
Oh, thank
I
you.
learned quite a bit, and I have quite a bit more to do on it before it's probably showable. So
Yeah,
me
too. I feel the same way. For me, I think we could really spend more time on some of the fern-like detail and the long grass coming in.
Yep.
Because if I look at the inspiration, I mean, it's just there's so much fine detail, and it's beautiful.
Right.
I love the fine detail. But within even a 2-hour class, there's only so much you can achieve, and
That's right.
I really like
That's right.
class is approachable. Some folks like the easy stuff, and I feel like we took a really simple, easy approach tonight to the composition. And then for anyone that wants to take it to the next level, you can do a whole nother round of detail on top of it, right? Which makes
Right.
it doable. So
Right.
wonderful. Well, I'll go ahead and pause the recording. For anyone that's watching the recording right now, please let me know if you have any follow-up questions. And I want to thank you for being here.